The Whispering House. I never believed in ghosts. Not really. But that changed the night I spent alone in my grandmother's abandoned house. She had passed away a decade ago, leaving the house untouched. It sat on the outskirts of town, surrounded by a dying forest, its walls sagging under years of neglect. When my mother asked me to check on it before selling, I shrugged it off as an easy task. Stay only during the day, my mother had warned. Strange things happen there at night. I laughed. Superstitions, I thought. I arrived at dusk. The house reeked of damp wood and decay. Dust covered every surface, and old furniture sat frozen in time. As I walked through the hallway, the floorboards groaned beneath my feet. Then I heard it. A faint whisper. I spun around. Nothing. Just the empty living room, shadows flickering in the dim light of my flashlight. I shook it off as my imagination and continued upstairs. That's when I saw her. A figure standing at the end of the hallway, just beyond the light's reach. A woman. Or what used to be one. Her body was too thin. Her limbs stretched unnaturally long. Her head tilted slightly as if observing me. Then she moved. Not walked. Glided. I scrambled back, my flashlight flickering. I rushed into my grandmother's old bedroom and slammed the door shut, my heart pounding. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. A sudden knock, 3 soft raps against the door. I held my breath. Silence. Then, scratching long, slow scratches against the wood, like fingernails, digging into the surface. I reached for my phone, my hands shaking. No signal. My only way out was the window, but it was jammed. I had no choice but to run. Gathering my courage, I grabbed a heavy lamp and swung the door open. Nothing. The hallway was empty, but the scratches were still there, deep, fresh gouges in the wood. I rushed downstairs, but as I reached the front door, my body froze. The whispering. It came from everywhere. Soft, guttural voices hissing in my ears, weaving through the air like a chant. I felt something cold brush against my neck. I bolted. I ran through the front door, down the porch steps, and into my car. As I sped away, I saw the house in my rearview mirror, and something standing in the upstairs window, watching, waiting. I never went back. The next morning, my mother called. Her voice shook. You went there last night?" "Yes," I said. "Why?" Silence. Then in a whisper, she said, "We sold that house 5 years ago. It was demolished last summer. But I was just there." Then I heard it. Faint. Through the phone. A soft knock. 3 times. Right behind me. The Vanishing Woman. In the late 1990s, I was a seasoned taxi driver in New York, proud of my ability to navigate every nook and cranny of the city. One monsoon night, as heavy rain poured down, I was about to end my shift when a woman flagged me down near Manhattan. Drenched and shivering, she pleaded for a ride to a distant suburb. Throughout the journey, she remained silent, her face obscured by a veil. When we reached the destination, a dilapidated bungalow, she handed me an old coin as payment and stepped out into the rain. Puzzled but too tired to argue, I pocketed the coin and drove away. The next day, curious about the unusual payment, I visited a local historian. He examined the coin and told me it was a rare antique, over a century old. Intrigued and unsettled, I decided to revisit the bungalow. To my astonishment, I found it abandoned with no signs of recent habitation. Neighbors revealed that the house had been unoccupied for decades, ever since a young woman had mysteriously disappeared on her way home during a stormy night. Haunted by the encounter, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had given a ride to a restless spirit, forever seeking her way home. The Vanishing Hiker. In the dense forests of the Pacific Northwest, I set out alone on a trail known for its breathtaking views and challenging terrain. As an experienced hiker, I was well prepared and had informed my friends of my route and expected return. As dusk approached, I realized I had somehow strayed from the main path. The familiar trail markers were nowhere in sight, and an unsettling silence enveloped the woods. Determined to find my way back, I pressed on. But the forest seemed to grow denser, and an eerie fog rolled in. Hours passed with no sign of the main trail. My flashlight flickered as its batteries waned. In the dim light, I noticed strange symbols carved into tree trunks, symbols I couldn't recognize. Panic set in as I felt an unseen presence watching my every move. Suddenly, I heard faint whispers, though no one was visible. The whispers grew louder, seeming to come from all directions. Desperate, I quickened my pace, but the whispers turned into guttural growls. My heart pounding, I broke into a run, branches scratching my face and arms. In my frantic escape, I stumbled upon an old, dilapidated cabin. With no other shelter in sight, I rushed inside and barricaded the door. The interior was cold and dark, filled with the faint smell of decay. My eyes landed on a dusty journal resting on a rickety table. Flipping through its pages, I read about previous hikers who had lost their way and encountered malevolent entities in the forest. The last entry was dated over 50 years ago, describing the exact symbols and whispers I had experienced. A sudden thud on the cabin door jolted me back to reality. The growls were now right outside. With no other option, I clutched the journal and braced myself. The door creaked, as if something was trying to force its way in. Just as it seemed the door would give way, the first light of dawn pierced through the cabin's grimy window. The noises ceased, and an overwhelming silence filled the air. Cautiously, I opened the door to find the fog lifted and the main trail visible just a few yards away. I hurried back to safety, clutching the journal as evidence of my harrowing ordeal. To this day, I warn fellow hikers about the haunted trail and the unseen entities that lurk within, waiting for their next victim.